This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Lea Sakran, your multilingual voiceover artist and narrator and writer. Welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's great to be here. Hi.
Well, we love to talk to people from around the world. We've been podcasting since 2016, over 1,200 episodes out there in the ether. And a couple questions
Wow.
before we get to the heart of your story. We always ask every guest, what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
I love doing it. And I think the voice, it is so important. It's our tool of communication, of connecting, of communicating.
Well, I think it's really interesting when I've talked to a lot of authors on the show, and I have seen a new trend where authors are narrating their voice, their audiobooks,
Right.
and a lot of times, nonfiction authors do it a lot, but fiction authors tend to want to go with voice actors, and but I find it's really interesting when somebody can actually do a project themselves, right? And actually use their own voice. It's kind of like a singer songwriter using their own voice versus somebody, because there's something about the author presenting their work that seems very, authentic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really love doing, narrating my own works, my own books, because I have the feeling it's like a good marriage. It's a connection where actually what you wrote, you hear it with your own voice, and it's actually also developing the personal relationship you have with yourself and with the story. And in that moment, it's like it's happening kind of that the story comes back to you, but through
Mhm.
your own voice. So you're actually in a dialogue with the story, and you start to discover um also within yourself uh, all you want to say by hearing yourself. It's
Yeah,
different from,
it's a different whole
yeah,
practice. Because, yeah, you see this with like screenwriter, film directors, like
yeah,
Orson Welles was like
uh-huh,
famous for Citizen Kane because he was able to bring that vision across the board. Like he had the story, but he's the actor and he's the director. So when you have that, then you kind of have this vision where you can make those words really come alive, and then you can actually frame it. So when you're like when an artist is trying to get their story out in the world, they try to have different like lenses and filters. And actors might interpret your thing and they have their own filter. So once you give it to someone else, it's a collaboration and that can work really well. But if you have a very strong vision for what you want to bring to the world, sometimes you want to do it yourself.
absolutely, absolutely. I love what you're saying. I mean, I do collaborate now with Gusta and Gusto. We are working on the German version also of the audiobook. And I have a whole team also of other actors. The English version, I did it all by myself.
Hmm.
And it's a very interesting experience because once within a team working together and also being the voice and the narrator there, it's an additional, you get even more perspectives. And it's really a lovely process.
It's interesting too because like
Mhm.
when you're multilingual, there's cultural aspects to language. I lived in Japan for 2 years,
Oh,
and
wow.
and
Yeah.
the Japanese language, it's based on kind of like kanjis and pictographic language. Like
Uh-huh.
when it was very interesting when I was there. I found that because the characters in the language actually have a lot of depth compared to like the English language, where you have like 25 characters to the alphabet, but their characters, they had like 80 Japanese specific and like 2 to 10,000 Chinese specific characters. And each
Wow.
one of those characters represents concepts.
Mhm.
So it ends up being really sometimes they could express something in a document that was a lot shorter than an English document, but actually had a lot of depth. But if you don't understand the history behind that language, you would miss things. So I was dealing with translators and interpreters, and I was trying to learn the language at the same time. But it's very interesting cultural like lens on something. So if you do something in a different language, you're gonna have a different impact, or you have to maybe understand that when you're doing the work. So how do you go about that as a multilingual artist?
It's so interesting what you're saying because it's not, as you say, the cultural aspect and also the emotional aspect, I would say. Every language, how you see things, has also an emotional aspect to it. So since I work in English and in German, I also translate it by myself. So, I have people rereading it, but
Hmm.
I see how I say the things. I can't just translate it. I need I want to translate the feeling. I
Emotion.
want to, yeah, the emotion, the also within the concept of the different social structures where the story, might take place. So there's the content of the story, which has a message. There are the cultural aspects and also, the social approach towards
Hmm.
different situations within the stories. So it's all about constructing different bridges where you transport cultural aspects embedded in social aspects. Um, Bridging emotions that I can touch my audience worldwide as how I communicate it. Sometimes I can't use the same paragraph
Hmm.
even
You have to
that,
rewrite it.
yeah, I have absolutely. I have to rewrite it until I really start to say, "Oh, yeah, that's it.
That's
Now I."
very interesting because as an artist myself, I'm a musician, and
Oh, wow, great.
so I'm a keyboardist, I'm a synthesist, so I play with sound. So I
Yeah,
actually do what you call sound design. And I
yeah.
do what people would call, like, George Martin from the Beatles had this idea of sound painting, and Jimi
Oh,
Hendrix
that's
also
a
referred
beautiful
to it.
word, sound painting, yeah.
Yeah, because, like, if you're a musician, we have a palette, like, the tape or the
Mhm.
recording studio, and we can layer, and we can have subtext, we can have, like, shadow vocals and things that you really don't make sense until you layer additional notes or chords or tones. And so until you get the full picture, actors and directors see this, filmmakers, painters understand it. But sometimes it's like the space between the note. It's like
Yeah,
what you don't say.
play the pauses.
Yeah. And it's like that. A lot of times that people will try to fill the space without giving time for the impact. And in certain, phrases, you have the subtext behind it. And so, like, if you're an author, a lot of times you have, like, hidden meanings and dualities and all kinds of things that you may have to go back and reread something to find the Easter egg, to find the path that was actually being set, but you didn't recognize it. So, in a world where people sometimes are so distracted and don't have attention span, like, how do you deal with that today? Because I remember I'm a child of the '70s, and, people could read 300,000 word books. Now people barely can read 60,000 word books.
It's great what you're saying, I love that, and coming personally, I also come from the music. I studied piano, also at the conservatory, so my background is also from the music. So I absolutely, connect with you with what you were saying. Um, Leaving the space that the stories are heard, I think that is so essential. Because what I feel what you're saying, it's like we're in such a fast time nowadays. That's how I encounter a lot of aspects.
Mhm.
And to take the time and this luxury to give the space that the tone can be heard, that the voice can be heard. Um, so often also by rewriting, for example, a paragraph that the content can be transported in different languages. It is also about when I am narrating it. I did this audiobook. I was very honored that I could do that from Siddhartha. And I mean, I've read it 6 times or narrated it 6 times because anyhow, I love the story. It's fascinating. Also the development of language connected to the different life situations. But it was all about this was really an audiobook for me where it's about pauses to, to feel the story. So
Yeah,
you compose, you give some words to it, and then you breathe.
yeah. I think that people
And
don't
this
give themselves time to actually discover the impact because a lot of times they're looking for the next thing instead of
Mhm,
actually in the present moment. This is kind of an idea from flow state in
mhm,
jazz. There's this idea of like being in the present and
yeah,
not, and also like there's no bad note. There's an opportunity, right? So in a fusion jazz or modal jazz band, if somebody plays a note that's unexpected, you don't stop the composition. You don't stop playing. You actually can use your 10,000 hours of experience and kind of adjust like a Herbie Hancock or a Miles Davis. They will
yeah,
adjust to that note. And it's like it's an opportunity. It's not a disaster, right? It's this idea that you can kind of live in the moment and then you can interpret that piece, and how you interpret it every day you could change it. And it's interesting when you take a book and you turn it into an audiobook, you take a original studio recording, you do the live version, it's a different, if it's a different, piece. Once you do something live or once you take it from one medium, like the written medium to the audio medium, it changes in ways, right?
it absolutely changes, and often also by writing the scripts. Like, I'm working currently on the book also of Gusta and Gusto, like, book 1. It'll come out as a book. Um, when you write a script, it's not the same as you write for the book
Yeah, it's like a
because the
teleplay or a
flow of that.
screenplay is not the same as a book.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's as you said, or as I understand it in composition, like you have this off note coming in, um, kind of thing, or offbeat, or there's like this kind of new dynamic, which is a possibility, which you can integrate within music. And the same is in audiobooks, I believe, or not the same, but maybe there's, some
Similarity.
form
Yeah,
a
it's like a
similarity.
dissonance or discordance or it's like or you can emphasize, like, if I'm in the studio, I can
Yeah,
go and I can emphasize certain sounds. So I can
yeah.
go back and I can actually layer and I can say, "Well, I wanna bring this bass out, or I wanna bring it down, or I wanna
Mhm.
have, like, a crescendo, a decrescendo, I wanna build
Right,
up, I wanna
right.
make." Yeah, I can actually focus, and we can actually get in a 4-minute song, we can take those seconds, like 10 seconds, 5 seconds here, a second here, and we're trying to emphasize a point because we're actually telling a story, but it's a very short form story. It's like maybe a 3 minute, 4 minute, maybe 10 minute, but it's not going to be like a movie, right? So it ends up being this like very distinctive piece of set of time that we're trying to get something across. Um, and when we put it out in the world, people are going to interpret it the way they feel.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about it, like, once you put something out in the world, you know, you listen to your fans and they interpret something differently than what you originally intended.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's what we were saying in the beginning. If the author, gives out the work to another voiceover or to another other narrator, then there's the interpretation also of the story, which is similar, like what you just said for the music, how it's going to be interpreted.
That's interesting how you came across. I mean, maybe kind of go back a little bit. Like, when did you decide to be a voiceover artist? How did that opportunity present itself?
Well, it's actually quite an interesting story. I worked in the theater. I worked in a big agency later on as a scriptwriter, and I wrote like over 100 scripts for publicity, for image films. And I also like directed the whole production, and I also did the castings of the voices.
Oh wow.
And camera, text, like everything. So mhm. And they asked me there, oh, don't you want to try also to be the voice? And I said, no, I really can't focus on everything. And later on, because I also work in counseling still a little bit, additionally to my work as an audiobook narrator and as a writer, and I worked with children with visual impairment. So audiobooks are very important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And there I actually came across a library who were looking for some voiceover artists. And from my 20s back, I also knew another voiceover actor. She's now a very, a known voiceover actress, and she lived not far away from me. And I said, oh, I'd like to audition there. And so she said, oh, I can use her microphone and just give it a try. And, it like things started a very,
Yeah.
easy
Kind of
way.
cascade,
Yeah,
into something that
just give it a
develops.
try. Yeah. Yeah, and there actually then my journey started, and I start to discover my own voice.
Yeah, it's important. That's like every
It's
musician at some
so
point
important.
dis discovers, like, a lot of times you
Yeah.
have singer-songwriters that were not really using their voice, right? They were giving their writing for other people, like famous like Neil Diamond.
Yes,
There are
yes.
people that were writing for other people, and then they realized, if I actually sing my own song, it's gonna
Mhm.
have a big impact. '70s was like the era of the singer-songwriter.
Yeah,
Um, but that it still has a big impact, because, like, when you actually take the reins, there's something that's really authentic in the vulnerabilities and just the worldview that you have when it's like a creator owned thing. Like when you create that vision, is this a synergy that and an interesting point of view, because it's very unique. It's not going to be kind of cookie cutter. A lot of times it's got a very unique voice that I find it very appealing as somebody who like consumes media.
wow. Yeah, and this authenticity, what you just said, I never thought of it in that way. Thank you for the inspiration that by doing everything, or, obviously I have,
Yeah.
team members and, but that this actually nourishes this authenticity. I never looked at it in that way, but it's so true.
Yeah, I mean,
I
the
think
world today
yeah,
is so full of, like, cookie cutter, cloning,
mhm,
copying, sampling,
yeah,
redoing the same movie how many times instead of having an original idea? I'm very much into independent,
yes,
arts, because a lot
yes,
of the new ideas, they come from the independents, where a lot of the bigger studios or bigger organizations in arts like to just recycle things that they are known properties. Like,
mhm,
now known sound, known, I know this is gonna work because it worked before.
mhm,
Where the
mhm.
risk taken is, like, people are risk averse to new, intellectual property. They like to just know that I knew this worked, so I'm gonna redo it.
Yeah, yeah. But with the storytelling, additionally, I'd like to share this with you. I mean, talking about Gusta and Gusto, I'd like to. It is. I also like these two. It's the story about two rhinos.
Mhm.
Um, but it just came to me. It was. I'm sure maybe you also know that feeling.
Right, the muse, the
A
muse.
song
Like, I
comes.
the
A
muse coming
muse.
in, yeah.
Yeah. where you actually like the secretary or the assistant of the muse.
A
It just
download.
goes
You're getting
through.
a download,
Yeah,
as people talk about today.
it
That's how
just goes through you, and you know, just I just trust what's happening, and often if I write, I just start writing,
a flow state.
and
You like
then
to
it
have a flow state
naturally
writer.
evolves. I never think about what should I write. I mean, I gave long time also, for a couple of years, about 7 years, courses in creative writing,
Mm.
and we just would have objects like a lipstick, a coffee, a tie. It already tells a story. You don't really
Yeah,
need to do
start with
anything
something.
about it. Just start with the lipstick
You know,
or
it's like
start,
with
or start with the tie or,
yeah, like a baby shoes never worn. It's like these lines, like the authors kind of open up. You can take something like an object, the baby shoes that were never worn. That's
yeah.
famous. I think it was Hemingway or somebody. But the idea is like, artists, we're kind of like we're always observing, and we can
Mhm,
take something that might not, appear that somebody's not really that creative, and we can give it depth, and we can give it, paint the scene, paint the moment,
mhm.
talk about the smell that, what was being, what's in the air, how the lights,
Yeah,
glimmering on something, or like we put the focus, we have these filters, and we can direct
mhm.
people, and because we're observing, and we're actually observing, and then we're taking that in with our own subconscious. So there's like that muse coming in, there's the internal, there's the external, and
Yeah,
we all synthesize it into
mhm.
something new. And it comes from other things.
Yeah,
We're taking things, the musicians, like, we're living with, like, you know, there's only so many notes on the scale.
mhm.
There's all these different
Absolutely.
styles, but how we approach it, we each approach things in different ways. And there's the blues is a very set style of playing, but how every
Yeah,
blues artist interprets it might be the same song, but how they carry it off is not the same.
absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the same as in communication also, I believe, that you talk about the same thing, but you can have completely different points of views, perspectives, also from the experience of life you have,
Hmm.
which is very, similar. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just I love the flow state. I'm a very, I can read music, I can sheet read, but I love kind of just jumping on my piano and just playing, and I'll
Mhm.
hit the recorder and I'll just go listen,
Yeah.
um, to, like, all these tapes. And it was
Mhm.
famous, like, a guy, Frank Zappa, a famous artist, used to tape, like, everything. He would record his live stuff, he would record sessions, and then he would sit in his living room with all these tapes
Oh,
and try
wow.
and then say, "Oh, this goes with this," and he was kinda like, non-sequential artist. He would
Mhm.
take things out of he wouldn't sequentially do it in one session, he would be taking things from the past, take thing from here, if you take from there,
Yeah.
and it kinda collage ma do it. And that they became like a thing where people say, "Well, that's a good way of getting out of a hole." Like, if you can't think of something, you could use that as a methodology to kinda
Mhm.
if you don't see the whole picture all at once, you don't get the download, you could actually work in that way and find something interesting.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. That's I mean, there's so many also techniques in some ways how you can approach something. And what I think is fascinating, through the techniques, you develop also new techniques. It's like one thing develops into the next.
The
I,
next
I
year.
always experience that in any creative acts I'm doing and projects I'm doing. You just need you just need to wait and follow the notes or follow the
Yeah,
muse kind of thing.
yeah,
Obviously, then you polish it and everything this and, techniques and you edit it
you're
but
refined, yeah.
at the basis, it's really what you said in the beginning, to be in this flow and to just go with the process and everything develops naturally.
Yeah, because I think if you don't force it, like you like over time, you kind of get this muscle memory to your creativity. And if you don't
Mhm.
doubt it, not that there's not going
You
to be
don't
moments,
right.
yeah, the moments where you maybe aren't sure, but the idea is that you go with your gut. You go with like your heart, you go with the soul perspective
Yeah.
instead of like the logical brain, like left right brain. Your logical brain sometimes is great if you want to get the grammar right, right? But if you're trying to get the idea into the world, it might not help you that much.
That is so good what you're saying. To have this because if you have a doubt, you put the doubt within yourself also. It's not that you have a doubt with the project. It means you have a doubt also within yourself, or it's creating, the print of doubt. And so, I'm absolutely with you. You really just need to trust, even if you maybe just to listen and just to go with the flow, and sometimes you give it a pause because not because you're unsure, or not because you can decide, to trust, so you're not unsure, but you give a pause to wait until the next information comes. Because I also believe that the pauses are part of the whole collage, of the whole
Yeah, and the
picture.
silence. It's kind of the
It's like
silence
the
is
space
yeah,
you're
space.
giving.
Yeah. I think a lot of people like lose that narrative because
Yeah.
like a lot of the tools we have today allow us to like just fill the space and then
Mhm.
we start overfilling the space. Because
Yeah,
like if you're a musician, like if you leave something kind of bare, well, there's the possibility somebody hears your note like you're a little off, right? You have a micro timing issue. You actually hit like slightly into a sharp and you didn't really want to do that, but you did. But
yeah,
there's something about like if you listen to older recordings where they didn't have the digital control, there are a lot of these micro timing, micro tonal, like I would call them happy accidents because they left them in the
yeah.
recording because there's something
Uh-huh.
about the imperfection that actually makes the art. Where a lot of times today people have the tools and then they overcorrect, and you can overcorrect to the point where you destroy the original intent. So I'm kind of the mind that like I love flow state. I like being in the present moment. I kind of like sound painting, and a lot of the pieces I do are like it's like in the moment, and I can't really. I could try. I can play it again, but it's not going to sound the same way again because I'm going to let it kind of
Mhm.
evolve, which is a different way of doing it. And I mean, I could write something that's very static, but I find it boring. So I tend to not go that way. And in a world today, people want repeatable loops. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, I understand why you want those loops, but I don't really buy into like using them, overusing them.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely understand. And that what you also said about the imperfection, which has to do with also authenticity and being in the moment of the happening, where it's like you're filling the jar with the emotion and with the breath in this moment. And I believe this is so pure, so honest, so human, and it just directly goes into the soul.
Yeah, I think it's a concern because if you go on social media, people are
Oh, yeah.
presenting like all these influencers.
Mhm,
A lot of young people get presented this overly like curated image. It's
mhm,
so overly curated, like, well, you could never really match that. And if you spend your time trying to be that, it's not actually real. It's a manipulation to make you feel like, well, that is possible. Well, maybe it's possible for finite moments, but most of the time, people aren't going to live in that kind of space. It's very artificial, and I'm kind of the mindset that is that really where you want to be? Because pulling all the ums out, not allowing a conversation that maybe doesn't go the way you originally wanted it to go, or a piece not going with your original intent, but being willing to let it kind of, oh, maybe it should go this way. Like sometimes you're fighting like the direction that the universe is actually giving you, and you're saying, well, I know better. And maybe you don't.
That's so good. Yeah, what you're saying, and also, with the time we're living now, with social media, with everything, I mean, it's opening doors. We connected, which I'm very happy that this is possible. But on the other hand, um, somehow it's losing this innocence, this this pureness, this just the happening, because what is fake, what is real, um and they're really absurd situations can develop out of this, because you believe more or maybe at some point it can happen, you believe more like the media, the social media, or what's happening there, and instead of keep following your heart, or you compare yourself with you know with with the perfection of presentations in the digital world.
Yeah.
um
Well, people searching for
yeah.
SEO metadata and saying, oh, like here's the thing that's the most popular. I'll go find out what the metadata is, what the SEO is. And then instead of being original or having your original idea, you go and try to clone what's getting a million views. Well, what, like, do you not understand? Like, if your post only gets 100 views, maybe somebody who saw it actually that it impacted them at a greater degree than the cat video that got a million views. Right. The cat
Yeah.
video got a million views, but like what impact does it have as versus an artist that puts out like original spoken word piece that really speaks to certain people? Maybe it doesn't get all the maybe in the moment it doesn't get the numbers, but over time it has an impact. But you're looking for some kind of metric that is very specific and maybe doesn't is irrelevant. you know,
That's so beautiful what you're saying. So it's actually about, purpose. What purpose? What's the, meaning of life kind of thing, finding purpose. Viktor Frankl, I maybe you know him,
Mhm.
the great, yeah. So it's all about knowing yourself, being connected to yourself, finding the meaning, and this whole loudness, I would say, in the world, to decide where you want to position yourself with your art.
Yeah.
And is it about, getting a lot of views, or is it the perspective, another one that you say, I'm with me and I'm loyal, you know, I'm loyal to myself, is a other argumentation than saying I'm loyal to the audience.
Well, it's a law of
Because
attraction. Yeah, if you put something into the ether under the law of
yeah,
attraction, like it eventually will
yeah,
find that you'll find your tribe. But if you're so hesitant because like I gotta find the thing that's in the algorithm, well, it's kind of like
mhm,
machine learning. It's like it just knows what you give it. And
mhm,
I'm my day job. I'm a software guy, and we have this idea of garbage in, garbage out. If I
mhm.
put bad data into the computer, it gives you bad data out. If I put bad intentions in, it's kind of karmic, and like you get bad intentions out. So like if you don't
Okay.
really do the work, then you get a very limited view, Right. And so if you're not willing to put your originality because you're scared, everybody wants to be safe. So fear, will keep a
Ooh,
lot of your work from going out the door because you're scared of what's going to happen.
wow. Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I would like to go back to this being loyal to yourself, which is a completely a shift of perspective. If you stay loyal to yourself, as I understood you, the tribe will come to you because you're loyal to yourself. And it's not, I'm loyal to the audience, I'm trying to chase them, because you can develop any product. If you want to chase, if you want to get audience, you can do research, marketing research and everything. But if you actually feel the purpose of what you want to give to the world, and for me it is storytelling,
Mhm.
and with the stories, I want to give hope. I want to give joy. I want to give humor. I want people to smile. I want people to feel connected, and I want people that they feel understood, as also I feel understood. For example, by the stories of Gusta and Gusto, which came to me as a muse,
Yeah.
and which I
That's
then
the best
would
way.
just like to share like with friends, Yeah. Yeah.
Because you put
And
something in the world that didn't exist, right? I love it when somebody comes up with a new idea. When they come up with a
mhm.
new character and it's not like, oh, it's not a clone of Mickey Mouse. It's not a clone
Yeah.
of Warner Brothers cartoons. It's not Felix the Cat. It's not this. It's not that. It's their own idea. Now they might have been influenced by,
Mhm.
the past. Everybody's influenced by their people that they look up to as an artist. But all your influence is kind of synthesized into your vision, right? And so it might have aspects that are come from a certain space, but it's not. It's your unique take on it. So I feel that independent artists or people who are coming from like the underground or the kind of unknown spaces, to me, is just more exciting to not see the same pattern, right? I like to see a different pattern because
Mhm.
that different pattern is more interesting to me than and I think some people like the familiar pattern because it gives them peace. I can
Mhm.
understand they like to get reinforced. Like,
Mhm.
say, reinforcement of what they already know makes them feel comfortable.
Of
The artists
course.
on the cutting edge tend to do things that put things into the space, like Miles Davis when he went to Fusion, they were purists in bebop. They said, "Well, that's not jazz," and it's like, well, I don't want to be in bebop anymore. I need to move. I need to move to something else. And people will argue and say, well, that shouldn't be in the canon. That's not part of the canon. You shouldn't do that. But then
Mhm.
a lot of times, if you're an artist or an inventor, say, well, now I'm on to something because somebody's telling me I shouldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Absolutely. Yeah, and also to have the courage, to grow, to be your own idol kind of thing. Um, and that all parts of your journey are beautiful. Often people say, "Oh, I'm developing, I developed something, or I developed myself." And where sometimes I have the feeling the idea of progressing is that the past always, what you've done in the past needs to evolve and to become better. But I believe that I have a different concept also, that every step every stepping stone has its own beauty, and
Mhm.
it is part of, of the whole chain, like pearls connected. Um, where even if you say, I develop, you could also say, this is where I'm at. This is the beauty of the moment of where I'm at now. And now I'm gonna go to the next stepping stone. And this is also beautiful. And maybe there are aspects in there from a past project,
Yeah.
but it's not, you know, where you like striving in development and what you've done before is not as good at what you've done afterwards. It's all connected, and it resonates with each other. It is you find it's like in a painting,
Yes.
you have a little bit red here and the red repeats up there and there's some pink coming in here. um
Where the
so
continuum doesn't have to be sequential, and this is where I think people make a
yeah, it's
mistake.
like,
Like, you'll see this with artists with, like, when they were 17, they
uh-huh,
did something amazing, right?
yeah,
And they grew, but they actually never really recaptured that moment when they were initial piece of work. And that initial
mhm,
piece of work is just as beautiful as anything they're doing now that they're 32,
absolutely,
right? And so
absolutely.
this idea that you progressed and everything you did in the past is not as valuable or is not doesn't have the impact isn't true because you can see this
Yeah,
with artists all the time.
absolutely. And
Painters, with it's real clear with artists, you can see it.
yeah, and also the idea, that time is like a line from the beginning, and then you progress. If time is a circle,
Yeah.
it's a completely different,
You keep on going
perspective.
back. I mean, the pieces of
Yeah,
what you do as an artist, I
yeah.
mean, what we do is we build on whatever I learned in my 10,000 hours of training on my piano or my bass.
Wow. Yeah,
I bring in that to now,
yeah.
and I
And
might yeah, and that's what happens.
and I mean, if I write, I always write like, let me show you the camera like that. I write backwards kind of thing. I go back to to continue, and it takes a little bit of the back, and it continues.
Yeah, you take pieces of it,
You
you never
take
know.
pieces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's all these different, like, colors or patterns. And, you go through your archive, and I've talked to, like, writers, there's, like, they have these notebooks, they have notebooks, and it's like, oh, they had this idea,
Mhm.
put it away, and then they come back to it 5 years later, it's like, now it works, and they develop it.
Now it's ready. Now
Yeah,
it's cooked.
yeah,
Now we
yeah,
can yeah, right.
and then they
Right.
might do some present moment in the moment kind of flow state, and then they had something from 5 years ago, and they have something now, and it's like, it's not sequential. It's
Mhm.
like things can come out of phase at the different points. You decide that something's going to work or not work, or it doesn't mean because you did it 5 years ago it's no good. uh
Yeah, or sometimes it just needs some time to rest, and then you do in between another project, and then you go, I mean, I'm working on this historical novel since ages, and did research, but it's not the first project, I would have released.
hmm
It
yeah,
just
that's a lot
needs
of stuff.
time, and there are other projects which come, and at some point you go back to this big initial idea, um, when it's ready, and often you see it also in the art that maybe this is just years later, or maybe, at some point when you're already at a certain age, then you go back to this initial idea where you started with a whole knowledge and emotional, strength
Yeah,
to
you have like emotional
able
maturity and
yeah,
intelligence. Like at a certain point you could have had this idea when you were 17, but you
mhm,
couldn't execute it, right? You just weren't
yeah,
ready to execute it with the depth
absolutely,
or necessary. But by the
mhm.
time you're 33, it's like, "Oh, now I actually have some maturity." Like Jack Kerouac, I've been on a road, I've experienced life, so I can actually will feel more authentic now because I have more depth or more, a lot more I can bring to this because I've actually experienced life, and then I can bring that experience into it.
Yeah, and also to decide what you want to think. I mean, you said experienced life, how you deal with situations in life, or how you also decide. We talked also about patterns, before, and to be alert and aware of which patterns which are the patterns? That's one of the first
Yeah,
questions.
like
Do you
awareness,
recognize your own patterns?
like a
And
situational awareness of what's
yeah,
going on, you know?
yeah, and maybe at some point you just also left some patterns, or you changed some things in your attitude, and then you go back to this project you started with 17, and then you have this flow because you have experience of life, and also where you decide which experiences um, influence you in which way, and which experiences you want to actually repeat
Yeah.
in some ways, and which experiences can you let go.
Yeah, letting go and then moving on and also not, not maybe burying it, but being
Yeah.
lesson learned. Like,
Lesson learned. Yeah, lesson learned. That's
like the
good.
looking glass self, like a Victorian concept of actually doing that self-analysis to figure out where you could be, like instead of
Uh-huh.
just burying it and shunning it and having the shame, you like, why do I do this? What is my story? Like, why do I react this way? What maybe I could actually analyze my patterns.
Yeah.
Maybe I can start to tell a story about what these patterns mean, you know. But you can't do that if you just like shove them down and it's like, well, I'm just gonna suck it up and I'm not gonna think about it.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, and just to also, it's like looking at yourself in a friendly way, and then actually, you're the master of your own story. And also you have the right. I think that's very important. You have the right to tell your stories.
Oh, permission structure. Yeah, because a lot of people like, they have self-loathing. They don't feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
The insecurities that prevent you from moving forward. When you start to love yourself, which is a simple thing, everybody said, "Well, love yourself," and then oh, well, that's simple. It's like not so simple. A lot of people don't do it.
Yeah. We need to be patient with ourselves, and we need to keep up the humor. And I think, often you say, well, I didn't have the chance, but you need to give yourself a chance. If you
Grace,
don't give I think that's where we start giving chances.
there's
And
no
that's where
grace.
we learn
Yeah.
to love ourselves also, and to connect and be able to give love.
Well, I think it's really interesting. Like what I've seen. Maybe we'll kind of close it out here, but audiobooks give people in this world where people don't have attention span. It gives
Hmm.
like a new type of reader that maybe feels intimidated by the text of a physical book. But
Hmm.
in the space where they're commuting or they're walking or they're jogging or they're in their bed and you need to, under like kind of like cycle down, that idea of like an audiobook is very, you know, I think it's not as intimidating as some people as actually reading like a Moby Dick. Like if you try
Yeah.
to like a kid today, oh, I can't read that. But if you gave them an audiobook version of it, they could digest it. Um,
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I want to thank you for being on the show today. It's always amazing, and we always, time flies by. But we do have your Amazon Audible link there, and we have
Thank
your
you so
primary
much.
link to your
Yeah.
website. That those are fully clickable once we're in publish mode. So we've been live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and those links will be clickable. And we do encourage people to go check out the URLs that we have for the artists that are on the show, and follow up and check it out, and get into the book, and get into like all the content you have on your website. So if people go to your website, what will they find there?
They will find my voice there, demos of my voice. They will find my projects. They will find my services. Also, if someone, many people write stories, and they might also think about actually narrating their stories. So, if there are people who want their stories as an audiobook, I'd be very happy, I'm open to talk about it, and also maybe to send a free excerpt, how it could sound with my voice.
Of course.
Obviously, also you need to choose the narrator. It's very important to many people, they choose a narrator also. They
Mhm.
often go back to the same narrators because they can connect with the voice. Um, so yeah, that's a service I offer, and otherwise also, for agencies, obviously I do. I'm a voiceover artist and I offer my services. Yeah.
That's awesome. So we do have a lot of creative people who listen to the show, a lot of authors and people who are generally creative, and so that is something that people should engage in if they didn't know. Like, well, how could I start? Like, this is somewhere they can
Absolutely.
check out, and
Absolutely.
that's why we do the show because we like to connect. Like our audience is a community of artists, and if this speaks to you, this resonates, then check it out. I want to thank you again for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. And I'd be very happy as soon as also the books are published. I'll be very happy to send you the links to the actual books additionally to the
Awesome.
audiobooks.
That's awesome. Then we can add that to our our postings because this is not going to be on multiple. We create a landing page
Yeah.
for every episode, and it has all the major places. Like this will be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and we have our own blogger page at famlectorghost.com. So if we have additional links, we can always add them back in. So
Oh, so cool.
so thank you very much for being on the
Thank
show
you
today.
so much. It was lovely. I enjoyed so much, how we connected and how we resonated and how we exchange also our feeling towards art and how what's happening in the human soul while we develop.
Well, the arts are kind of like my it's a place I love to be. It's my solace. It's my cathartic, outlet is sound in all forms. But I want to thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much.